Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Eternal Cylinder live stream. My name is Genesee Gray with Good Shepherd Entertainment. I'm here again with Edmundo Bordeo, Technical Art Director of Ace Team. Today we have some really cool stuff to show you on the art front, and we're going to showcase some concept art and answer more of your questions. So stay tuned for that. First, though, we like to start with our contest, and Edmundo's going to help us with that. Some of you may be part of our Discord, and hopefully you are. If you're not, join us. We have a channel called Roundtable, and that's a place where we propose some discussions to you guys, and you discuss some really cool stuff. So the one last week, we were talking about symbols in the game, and we asked you to design your own Tribum family symbol, inspired by the ones that you might see. We have our winners coming up, and the first one, if you don't mind Edmundo to show, is Shattered Reality, with their really cool, like, butterfly-esque symbol here.
Let's see. Yes, this is the first one. Hello.
Yeah. So everyone say hi to Edmundo.
Hi.
Edmundo,
Happy Friday.
Thank you for joining us. Yeah. So what do you think of this, like, this butterfly exploding everywhere?
It reminds me of the little bugs that give you kind of a stamina in the game. So this one is like a prettier version of those bugs. So this would be a family like that kind of appreciates like speed or stamina. But they have a prettier symbol than just a bug. Yes.
I like that. You read a lot into that. That's cool. Okay, so our second place person is Walladeer with their one step ahead. Now, it took me a minute because I was like, hey, this is the loading screen, but this is the cylinder here, and then you can see some of the emojis and the loading guy from the game in the front. So what do you think about this, Edmundo?
Yeah, I like that they added a pretty colored looking one in front of the loading screen guy. And yeah, it's very straightforward. Our family has to escape from the cylinder.
Yeah, I guess that's your life when you're kind of a Tribum, huh? Okay, and our last one from Nintendo Nate, they say that it represents the Tribum family, the speedy guy, high jumper, shrine expert, and storage Tribum. So I think we have sort of a cave drawing looking one here. What about this one?
And I read also on the Discord that it's yellow because there's this mutation in the game where you can see hidden things. And when you have this mutation, you see these drawings in yellow. It's kind of a UV light sort of thing. So it's kind of a painting that you can only see, but it's secret. It's hidden, and you can only see it when you have the mutation. So I thought that was cool too.
Very cool. Okay. Well, I believe with that, we're going to jump into some of the stuff you'd like to share, and I will ask your questions that you've previously asked in Discord and any new ones that you have kind of while we go along. So go for it.
So today I'm gonna show some like concept art and images we did before production and during production, and also some of the things I'm going to show are not necessarily in the game, because when you're making concept art, sometimes you have ideas and drawings that are not the ones you finally use. So I'll let you know when something is definitely not in the game. Well, this first one is something that Walter did. This one is actually when we already had pretty much the design of this creature ready. But it was very cool, so I wanted to include it.
Yeah, we just had that in the newsletter, so hopefully everyone signed up on the Eternal Cylinder just website, which is as what you would expect it to be, eternalcylinder.com. And I think Carlos was writing something about its hunting abilities and using without its eyes and talking about that, which is very cool.
Yeah, and it has these bird legs. It's very quick, and yeah, it finds the Tribum because of their smell. So yeah, the camouflage, for example, doesn't help you escape from this predator.
Yes, Bosch, or as you call Sniffer, right?
Yes. Sniffer was the dev name before it had a proper name. This next one is of actually the little ball ones, the glick balls, were the first one that were designed of these creatures, and then the bigger version My idea was that it was the same as the glick ball, but after it grew up. So there on the left, you can see kind of the intermediate version that would be kind of a larger glick ball. And you can see it's developing its legs and kind of its different shaped mouth. And when it grows, its legs kind of pop out from the sphere, like it becomes softer, and so his legs can come out. And that's where the their current name is Clickballs turn into, I forget the official name sometimes because we use the dev names so often.
The Tungle
But
Groplet?
Tangle Groplets, yes. Thanks.
Discord had a lot to say. They got a preview of this a while ago, and this middle kind of mutation evolution portion is not in the game, correct? You just basically have like little, and then you have Tungle Groplet, and then Tungle Grop later.
Yes. The intermediate versions is something that something I would have liked to add, but it's not in the game. Like if we have kind of the chance to do an update, that's one of the first things that I would like to include.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they were. He looks very unhappy, like squishing that little bottle there. He's probably gonna evolve quickly.
Yeah, I imagine that a bird before coming out of the egg, when it's too small for it, it must be very uncomfortable until that moment when you can come out.
Yes. Well, here's a question from Discord that will probably apply here too. SMJ James asks, what was your favorite mutation model to work on? And if you did, and if you didn't, what is your favorite?
I did work on a lot of the models of the mutations. Like often I would make kind of the basic shape, and then Walter would make kind of the final detailed version. My favorite treble mutation to work on was the cube, probably. Because at first I didn't know if it was really going to work. It was kind of out there. But once I saw it in the game, it was great, and yeah, it was really fun to get that to actually work. And so the next slide, it's actually basically the same idea, but extrapolating it, that a Tungle Grop is the adult version of the Tungle Groplet. And I just drew a quick kind of intermediate of how that kind of blend would happen between the Tungle Groplet and the Tungle Grop. Like that adolescent awkward version in the middle is
Prepubescent Tungle Grop.
Yeah, and the sphere would become hardened when he's an adult, and the adult version is the one that would produce the glick balls. So inside the green sphere, you can imagine that maybe that's where they gestate the little glick balls, and eventually the Tungle Grop would through his mouth like vomit these little Tungle glick balls. So that's that's the whole life cycle of the creature.
Okay. Ceramus says, and this is like an incredulous thing, I think that she's saying, you thought you could do something more surreal than this? Exclamation point.
Is that a challenge?
It sounds like a challenge. I'm afraid now.
I think it is possible to make it more surreal because in a way, even though the world is really weird, eventually the idea is that after you play that you understand why things are like that. While there are some really surreal things that after you watch them, you still don't understand anything, and that's not kind of the intent. So yeah, it would be possible to make something way more surreal and weird, but I don't think it would be better for it.
Gotcha. Walladeer asks if there are any discarded creatures that you designed but just never made it into the game, and if so, can you tell us about them?
Yes, one of Carlos's design was kind of a woolly mammoth, like a quadruped, but with its head very close to the floor, with blue fur. And its kind of special thing was that it had a tail that was kind of a crane, like very high, and it had a ball hanging from a kind of a rope. So what was going to be interesting about this creature is that it was going to use its tail appendage like kind of a ball and chain attack. And that ball is where it had its eye also. Yeah, and the idea was that this ball eventually was something that you were going to use for a mutation or something like that.
That's the weirdest scorpion elephant I've ever heard described, but now I want to see it.
Unfortunately, I'm not going to show it today.
I don't mean this second.
This is another drawing from Walter after we had designed the Tongal Grub. And yeah, I think one of the directors was like this scene in The Lord of the Rings when the hobbits are hiding kind of under a rock and the Ringwraith is looking for them. Like that same feeling, but in the world of the cylinder. So yeah, this one is really cool too. This one is the first flying creature that we designed, maybe. And yes, its ability is these kind of tape things that it has in front of the head are sticky, and that's what it uses to swoop in and capture the trail. So
that's one of my favorites. It's one of the scariest. I think I know it doesn't look scary, but when you're walking along and suddenly you're in the air, that's pretty scary.
Yeah, and it's fun that sometimes you can reach tall places because this creature drops you there, and there was maybe no other easy way to get there.
Yeah, pick me up.
If you survive, then yeah.
If you survive.
Yes.
Tintan was asking if there's any art concept that you had a really tough time implementing into the game.
Let's see. Usually the floor sometimes can be one of the difficult things to implement, just because it has to. So I'm thinking about the floor for the snow world. Say you have all these different effects like ice or the glitter effect that maybe you have seen. And sometimes getting just the thing to work correctly on a little patch is okay and not a problem. But you have to make it work with everything else, with when it blends with the desert, when it blends with other things, or maybe the terrain, you will see a crack between one piece of terrain and the other. So there's a lot of things that you have to pay attention to when working on the ground of the game. And the ground is like 90% of what fills the screen, so it's very important to make it interesting.
Stream is talking about a glitch that they're seeing. I'm gonna keep watching it. If the stream is glitching out for you guys, let me know and we might have to restart, but otherwise we're just gonna keep continuing and see how many.
Okay, so this was the concept for the witness, and it's hard to see in the game, but the eye on the screen is actually looking at the trebum once it's targeted. So it's not just a kind of projection of an eye that's doing its thing. It's kind of looking at the characters too.
Oh wow! I'm not sure I ever stopped long enough to look without running.
Yes. And usually it's the whole creature is aiming at you too, so it's a subtle effect.
Sarmas asks, what's your favorite thing about the art? Were you excited to make it, and what's your favorite idea of it?
My favorite thing about the art is probably the creatures. The fact that since it's an alien world, that you can kind of design creatures that are very different, that rather than just take kind of an animal that exists and modify it a bit, that try to make it really feel alien. So yeah, that's I think probably my favorite thing to work on the art.
Tintan asks, is the team ever going to consider making an art book for the game? I can take this if you don't want.
We have done for previous games. It's not on the schedule right now, so it's a possibility, but so I don't know. I can't answer for sure.
Yeah. If you want one, ask. Honestly, we've made them before, and if there's a huge demand for it, well, it's something we'll look into for certain. So request it if you want one.
On this slide I'm showing, well, it was actually about the hazards in the game, like heat, cold, and creatures. but this shadow is kind of the first version of the Zushgard, the one that floats above and kind of sucks you up. So
Oh.
that shadow was kind of the first kind of shape it was going to have. And the idea was that once you saw that big shadow over you, you would know that you're in danger. But what happens when kind of the shadow is what is kind of warning you, is that depending on the angle of the sun, the creature might not be directly above you. So then we changed the idea that the Zushkargis has kind of this vertical light that tells you when the creature is directly above you, rather than this shadow. So yeah, this is the concept of the Zushgarg, and yeah, in one of the little squares there you see how I imagine the creature would stand on the ground when he's not floating above. So that's why these kind of at the ends of these kind of green things, the eyes are on these little pads. So those pads are what the creature uses to step on the ground. And I suppose when he's stepping the ground, he's kind of crushing his eyes, so he has to close his eyes before he lands. And yeah, there's a drawing of it eating some unfortunate trevenants too.
Nice. Okay, these are unrelated to what you're showing, but they're asking. In one of the previous live streams that we had together, you were talking about we saw some of the early builds of the game, and toxic gas was purple instead of green. I think maybe Danielle had shown it early. So they asked if there's a specific reason for the change from purple to green, and maybe it's a good time to talk about like what color means in the game as far as indicating things.
Yeah, that's basically right. That the colors. We made the change because the colors needed to be kind of more consistent to indicate things. So for example, the Onkifurt, when it lands, it creates these green clouds of smoke that are toxic. So we already had green smoke, meaning this smoke is toxic. While there was another cloud of smoke in another part of the game where a kind of dark blue or dark purple smoke was one that you could enter safely, but it kind of hides you from predators. So when we changed the canyons so that the smoke that actually hurts you is green, it's just to make it more consistent that all the green smoke is toxic and all the kind of dark purple, dark blue smoke is just for cover and it won't hurt you.
Okay. There, see? Hopefully that helps you guys. Here's another kind of color question. They've noticed that when a trebum pattern repeats, the colors change a little. Were all of the possible colors handpicked, or are they handled by a sort of hue shift mechanism?
The color patterns are handmade for the most part, but also some patterns we allow them to hue shift a little bit. So say for example, if there's a pattern that's kind of black stripes and white background, that one might not have hue shift variation, but others like in the first biome probably especially, there are some skins that have more variation. So it was pre-designed and with a variation kind of say 20% variation or something like that can be random. On this, those were kind of the slides I had for creatures, and here I'm going to show more about the environment. So this is one of the first concepts for the snowy biome, and with these kind of red bridges. And the color palette for this biome, actually this painting was kind of the inspiration for the whole cold biome. That I wanted it to, like usually cold environments you kind of imagine kind of cloudy skies, very gray or all blue. But this painting still made me feel, okay, this looks like a cold place, but it has splashes of color, so I really liked it. And I wrote down the name of the artist. It's Betty Franks. And yes, just wanted to show that because it really kind of, you can see most of the colors of elements in the world come from this.
Very neat.
This concept, well, I really wanted to add these kind of laminar things these corals, and that would kind of help to add color to the world. And yeah, it comes from, we had made other designs of kind of these flat surfaces that we didn't end up using, but we're using them instead in the cold biome. So for this concept, I also wanted to show kind of the process of making it. That, oh, actually, it was not fully a drawing. I cheat a bit by first having a 3D thing and then drawing on top of it. It's not cheating at all in game production to just use all the tools you can to produce concept art.
There's no cheating in efficiency.
Yes, that's right.
They're asking about the red arches. It's kind of a really unique feature that people remember. They would like to know what the process was like designing them.
For these, actually this concept was, I don't remember if it was before we had already figured out how we were going to implement them. No, I think we hadn't implemented them yet. So the idea is that they are kind of these branches, but they need to look kind of organic, how they both blend with the floor and blend with each other, so that they don't look like just constructed bridges. So we have kind of segments that are kind of the connecting segments, and the segments which are the bridges. And the bridge segments are like a line that you can actually deform to make it match. So the ends match with the kind of branching segments, but everything in between the bridge is like a line that we can dynamically kind of make very. We can stretch it, we can bend it, and that makes sure that everything looks like a continuous surface. Yeah, this concept is probably my favorite concept that I made for the game.
We have a number of new people joining us in chat, and they're asking what the Eternal Cylinder is. They're loving your art and just wanting to know more about it. Do you think you could summarize it real quick for them, just for people that are joining us and have no idea what we're showing?
So the Eternal Cylinder is a game where you play as these little creatures called Trebum, and you increase your family or your tribe of little creatures and on an alien planet. And the main feature that you will immediately see is that in this world there's a giant cylinder that is crushing the world. So not only you're kind of this little creature at the bottom of the food chain and trying to survive, but you also have to figure out what this giant cylinder crushing the world is and how to survive. And you're always kind of moving on and finding the next safe place before the cylinder crushes you. And this stream is basically I'm showing some concept art of things that are in the game, just a few that are not in the game, because concept art, that's how it works. Sometimes you imagine things that are not used. And yeah, this image is from the ice biome, the second biome you find in the game. And these are much earlier, and these are from Juan and Walter, and they are kind of more general ideas of when we were looking for kind of shapes and interesting things that you could see in the landscape. So yeah, something very similar to that big pyramid we ended up using for the shrines you find in the game. And other experiments of kind of, you see inspiration of very geometric things and mixed with organic things here too.
They're asking, why do trebums have eye bags?
Eye bags.
They're running a lot. They're tired, man. I don't know.
Yeah. Carlos designed the first trebum with eye bags, and it just became a feature that I don't know, it's part of how they look like. Yeah, no, I would have to ask Carlos. This one was just another image, an inspiration I had for one of the structures that the trebum would have, but it's one of the things that was not used, but I was looking for kind of organic looking things. And yes, in this exercise I have this structure on the right, and it was kind of, how do I imagine the trebum might build this structure on the right? And say that first one is, what if they used these kind of dried worms to build structures? Or the second one is, how about if they used kind of clusters of mushrooms to kind of coerce the mushrooms to grow into the shape they want to build? And the third one is more like what we went for. That is, it's kind of more to contrast with all the organic stuff that they use actual built rock and hard materials. And the fourth one is basically if they took a bunch of shells or made shells grow into a structure like that. This is one of the houses that is actually in the game, and it is again the idea that some of the early Trebhum houses are grown rather than built. So it's kind of a coral pumpkin thing that they use as a house, and the lamp also is kind of an organic thing.
Okay, I always loved these, and I wondered what inspired you to make that. You'd be surprised how many people spent a lot of time in them looking at the lamp and wondering if that was something they needed to do something with, just because they wondered, like they kept looking at the lamp. Is there a trick? Should I push something? It was really interesting.
In this case, it's just a heat source, so it helps you kind of hatch the eggs. But no, not anything other than just a light and heat source. This is another unused idea, and it was when about having the Trebhum constructions be kind of these flat mushroom things that they grew. And one of the reasons we didn't end up using it was because these large diagonal surfaces didn't work that well for gameplay reasons. Say, for example, if you put something there, it immediately fail. Enemies would not really know how to navigate up to catch you. But in parts, that kind of little bowl thing on the top was where, for example, you could put an egg and the Trebhum could, I don't know, stand there and not be on a diagonal surface. So this next one was also that idea of these kind of flat mushroom things that they could use to build.
Unrelated to what you're showing, Dragon Master asks, does the mathematician possess some kind of intelligence, or is it connected to the cylinder and only taking direct orders? Story-based questions now.
Let's see, the mathematician and the cylinder, it's difficult to say where one ends and the other starts. So there's definitely an intelligence to the entity. But yeah, I wouldn't, I'm not going to clarify more beyond that.
Crisis Librarian asks, what would be some of your influences? Some designs seem reminiscent of Wayne Barlow and maybe some Fantastic Planet stuff.
Fantastic Planet, I have seen that movie, and yeah, I definitely see the connection. When Barlow, I don't know. Maybe he worked on the movie, I don't know. But yeah, that you could say it was one of the influences, and say the Dark Crystal might be another influence, and yeah. So yeah, good eye actually seeing kind of the connection. This concept was about the gather spots where the Trebhum kind of meet, and it also shows the idea that when Trebhum speak, that they kind of have this visual representation of what they are talking about. So say the elders have, you can see this with the elders. And one thing that I have seen a lot of people play the game that they don't know that they can do is that when an elder is speaking and you can see kind of this blue representation of what the elder is saying, that you can rotate the camera and it's actually a 3D thing, a volumetric thing that you can look at from different directions. So yeah, the idea is that culturally, like Trebhum always like to sit in a circle, kind of this watering hole, kind of gregarious way to sit and talk about things. But you never actually hear Trebhum kind of their language. It's rather that you can see it and you don't really understand what they are saying.
Uh-huh.
This warning is one of the things that we did not use in the game, but just wanted to share it anyways. So it's in the beginning of the game, if you see those little orange kind of eggs in the middle, that would be kind of the eggs you see in the very first introduction scene. And here was the idea of these three elders that somehow were kind of going to narrate or kind of give you some backstory. And yeah, they have their third eye, they have these big headpieces, which I don't know their function, but make them look very, very regal and important. And yeah, instead we started with something much more kind of direct, like start from something small and immediately you wake up next to the cylinder. And the last thing I was going to show was just kind of the mock-up of the introduction of the game. And when you are one of many Trebum, something kind of shakes and you wake up. You are suddenly alone, not with the other Trebum. The egg lands somewhere on a nest or something, somewhere cozy. And the idea that there's a heat source that turns on suddenly because eggs need heat sources to hatch. And the Trebum kind of pushing himself out of the egg, and the game starts. Yeah, so that was everything I had to show about the concept art of creatures and environments.
Okay, we have one more question about the cylinder. I'm gonna guess this is lead to speak for local host. Sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. What are the surface and core temperatures of the cylinder? Wow, that's specific.
What are the surface and core temperature? Well, when the cylinder is moving, you can see it becomes really hot, and I think it's implemented that I'm trying to remember if the heat from the cylinder can actually hatch eggs or not. But yeah, it's variable. It gets hot when it moves, and it's ambient temperature when it's stopped. And the core of the cylinder, I wouldn't be able to say what the core temperature is. So I don't know.
SMJ James wonders why the three elders watching over the eggs was scrapped. I guess they like it.
Because there are many ideas that are scrapped for many reasons. Like sometimes you just say, in this case, the story direction. It ended up having nothing to do with these three elders, so it just didn't make sense to include. Other times, maybe if it's, say, a creature that you didn't include or something like that, it's not that it was a bad idea, but just that time you spend making one thing is time you don't spend making another, so it just means that there was another creature that was more interesting to add.
Do you want to show my favorite video of the week? Are we saving that for something? Because that is the best video.
Oh, okay, yes, I'm going to show it now. It's, let me explain. No, I don't need to explain it. It's basically a motion capture animation test, and I'm just going to show you and then explain a little bit what it is. So, there we go. So, this is a little Trebum animation, and in a second you are going to see like how this was made. Like, it looks a little bit jittery and funny, and that is because it's actually a motion capture puppet that was used to make the animation. And
this vacuum hose is epic.
Yes, the trunk is actually a vacuum hose, very appropriate. And I remember a streamer asked what the size of a Trebum is, and this puppet, I actually have it here, is the very kind of to scale size of what a Trebum is in size. So a big dog or something like that. And yeah, I have a second video kind of showing inside of like how it's done inside of kind of a VR setup where you have these trackers on the puppet, and you can see kind of how I'm animating inside, kind of with the headset, looking at 3D what the truck is doing.
These guys, you never know what's happening behind the scenes. Cardboard boxes, whatever, it works. They want to pet trim them. Don't we all? We all want to trim them. All right, let's see. Last questions as you get to this point in the stream. Sarmas Panchu asks, if you would compare each biome with a daily room, which would it be? Like for them, they think the savannah is exotic, so they compared it to their living room. I guess they have an exotic living room.
So yeah, the savannah, I'd say, is the one that feels more like cozy to me. So that might be the kind of bedroom or where you sleep. The snowy one would be, I thought kitchen just because of the fridge, I guess. The desert, yeah, it's kind of the exterior, I'd say, like the garden. Because the story says it's difficult for Trevor to actually live there. And I cannot spoil anything about the other one, so.
Yes, nice try. Nice try.
Let's say that's the basement, the secret place.
Oh, okay. Vitagargan 177. When can I buy the game? I really want to play. Later this year, we'll announce it. So stay tuned for the exact date happening later this year. Yeah, don't worry. It's launching later this year. We're not announcing the date and then making you wait. We won't do that to you. Okay, last questions. Unless there's more stuff you want to show.
No, that's actually the concept art I had prepared to show, and yeah, the silly motion capture video.
Yes, excellent. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed this with Edmundo. We really love these art streams. I think this is the first one was great. I like this one a lot too. It'll definitely be up on YouTube after this, so if you missed any of it at the beginning, tune in. We'll share that in Discord. Hopefully there'll be a link to Discord showing up here. That's where a lot of our communication happens. So jump into Discord, look up Good Shepherd, and I think on YouTube, and you can see the whole playlist of great streams like this from the devs at Ace.
Well, and thanks. It was really fun to show this stuff.
Yay. All right, happy Friday, everyone. We'll see you in 2 weeks, not next Friday, but the Friday after.
Okay, well, bye-bye.